Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 16 of SoLeadSaturday. The guest we have today, Rand Fishkin. He is a founder of Moz as well as SparkToro. He is a public speaker. He is a YouTube content creator. He is an author of bestseller book Lost and Founder. So in general, he's everywhere. Let's welcome him and hear his career journey. How did he find his passion and manage to be one of the leaders in the areas he is passionate about? So welcome, Rand, actually, to my Solid Saturday podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So moving to the first question is around your passion. So when I saw it, it is more or like, aligned towards marketing and entrepreneurship. So how did you realize it actually? How did you find your passion?
Gosh, to be honest, I started by dropping out of college and having no idea what I was going to do. I was initially excited about web design, so
Mhm.
I liked the artistry and the visual side of creation. I like the creativity that demanded, and of course, I've always been attracted to and interested in the internet.
Mhm.
Even when I was in high school and middle school in the 1990s. And so, web design felt like a good match, but I unfortunately am not a talented artist or designer
Mhm.
and didn't have a lot of success with that, but eventually stumbled into SEO and marketing and
Mhm.
found that the combination of being able to do very technical and statistics-based things along with very creative things on the content marketing side in particular really appealed to me, and so that's where I've spent my career, and it's been a really enjoyable one.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, realizing that what are the weak points and, working on your strengths,
Yeah,
moving
yeah, I
towards.
think that sometimes folks feel like when they're getting into a
Mhm.
practice that it's not if they're not good at it, if they're not doing well at it, that it is a waste of time. But I
Yes.
think in many ways you have to stumble and fail a few times to find what you're not good at and what you are, what you like about something, what you don't.
Mhm. Yep, very true. So definitely you took the right steps towards it, actually pursuing your passion the way you are leading right now in the entrepreneurship. You are a successful leader. You have lots of community following you. So what are the important steps actually once one finds his interest or the passion to work on it? Like,
Yeah. I think it depends what you want to do with your career. There are certainly, there are people who want to be able to amplify
Mhm.
their presence on the web and reach a lot of people, become influential in the community. And then there are people who love to just put their head down and work, and that is a wonderful thing too. And we need both of those, right? I think that great leaders and entrepreneurs can actually be either one. There are plenty of fantastic CEOs that I know who led companies
Mhm.
to great success, and they are, very much not public figures for their
Mhm.
companies and businesses, right? They're much more behind the scenes, and that works fine.
Mhm.
I would say that um, the steps that I would take to try and find, what's successful for you, they start with a great self-analysis, right? A willingness to invest in the process of self-discovery, of finding out what gives you energy and what puts you in a state of flow where you can produce your most high value work, and what that is, and then finding people you can surround yourself with who will do those same things in areas where you have weakness, but you know that your business or your efforts demand competence. And one of the other things I really urge people to do, I talk about this a little bit in Lost and Founder, is you don't have to shore up your weaknesses.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can just find ways around them. If you are, for example, I really dislike sales. I've
Mhm.
never been good at sales. I don't, I almost don't believe in it. I know there are people who love it and are great at it, but I'm not one of them.
Mhm.
So it's fine. The businesses that I've built, Moz and SparkToro,
Mhm.
the efforts that I've invested in, they basically circumvent the need to have a sales team or a sales process.
Mm-hmm.
and go with self-service instead. So I'm good at marketing, bad at sales. Fine. Let's build businesses that rely on marketing, not sales.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's a good thing actually. It's definitely is going to help for the people actually to understand how to work on it. When they are, but most of the times people struggle, and then they unnecessarily spend their time on which is like unachievable.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Definitely
don't have
got
to,
to do the proper analysis and take the steps towards it.
and sometimes, right, if you're building a company or a business or a career for yourself, you can find avenues where you don't need to get good at your weaknesses,
Mm,
right? If you're, terrible at math or not a creative person, or you're very introverted and you don't like, social interaction, you have social anxiety, or you are very outgoing and you need to be around people, whatever it is, right? Whatever side of the equation you fall
mhm,
on, you can find paths. The wonderful thing about the modern world,
mhm,
even in the time of crisis that we're in right now around the world, is that
mhm,
you can, the world is big enough and broad enough that you can find a path for
mhm,
almost every passion.
mhm. Yep. And that's it, pretty interesting actually. You mentioned in your unique facts as well. Being introvert, also you managed to be a public speaker, which is like a very good speaker actually. So how did you do that? Was
Yeah,
it
I
more
mean, when
practice?
I started out, like everyone else, I was terrible, terrible. Um, I think you could watch
Mm-hmm.
probably some early YouTube videos of me giving talks, some of my presentations from early conferences and events back in, gosh, what would that have been, 2005, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that eventually made me great and got me, invited to lots of keynotes. I don't know if I'm great, but good enough, right?
No, you are
Um,
great. Actually, I watched your videos after that.
oh,
So you are
oh,
definitely very good.
but I think the thing that helped me was actually doing the painful task of watching myself speak
Mm-hmm.
and making the investment of watching other people speak and seeing what the difference was between truly great speakers and presenters and what I was missing out on and where I could improve. I,
Mm-hmm.
I know for a lot of folks, right, it can be painful, really
Yeah.
painful to like go listen to yourself, watch yourself on video. That's not a comfortable activity, but it can be hugely rewarding in terms of being able to say, oh, I see that I have this disfluency. I see that I have this tendency. I
Mm-hmm.
see that I am not dynamic on the stage. I don't move enough, or I move too much and I ramble. I
Mm-hmm.
am not focused enough. I don't explain these types of concepts well, right? And then you invest in those and you get better, and you structure, like we talked about earlier, you structure your presentations and your style to complement your strengths and avoid your weaknesses.
Yeah.
So for
And it's
example,
a lot more like, in public speaking, it is very important to connect to the audience as well. So unless until you do have those skills, it's very hard
yeah,
to
but
get into
it's
public
practice,
speaking.
right? Just like anything else. I do think, by the way, one thing that made me much better at public speaking was video.
Mm.
Having to record a
Yep.
weekly video where I gave, tips and instructions and tactics, that
Mm-hmm.
was hugely helpful for my speaking career as well. I think it also got me invited to a lot of events because
Mm-hmm.
those organizers would see me on video and they'd say, oh, that guy is reasonably good at doing this. Let's invite him.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely. Actually, once you start doing it, and it is more about showing courage as well, like, doing the things. And then, even though you fail it at first time or the 10 times, you should not give up at all. So that's great, actually. Moving to your entrepreneurship, actually, currently you are a founder of SparkToro.com. So, which is like making the high quality market research and the audience intelligence. So, would you like to elaborate more on that? Actually, I don't think audience is more aware about it. Like, how does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So SparkToro is not yet launched, but we should be launching soon.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the COVID crisis around the world is delaying us a little bit,
Yeah.
and we're rethinking exactly how we want to launch. I'm sure a lot of startups are in the same position, but we already have a few hundred early access paying customers, and
Mm-hmm.
we're sort of trying to help people with the market research problem around understanding what their audience pays attention to, listens, reads, watches. For example, right? If if you wanted to find out, especially, how do I say your name?
Vaishali?
Vaishali? Okay,
You're
great.
good.
Yeah. Right. If you wanted to find out, for example, what other podcasts do entrepreneurs listen to,
Mm,
and what have been great guests for them, you might try and survey your audience. You might
mm,
try and interview some people and get that intel, but that takes weeks or months of work, and it's not going to be very comprehensive because you can't survey a huge swath of the market. You're only going to get the people that are in your network. And
mhm,
so SparkToro basically crawls the web, builds all these profiles of people, and then lets you search across them. So you could say, I want entrepreneurs in, I don't know, Canada,
mm,
who are interested in software, and
mhm,
I want you to show me which podcasts they listen to. And
mm,
now I want you to show me which YouTube channels they follow,
mhm,
and show me what websites they visit, and show me which social accounts
mm,
they follow and amplify, right? And then you might say, oh, I'm going to invite some of those social accounts, some of the people behind the social accounts that these entrepreneurs in Canada follow, and get them on the podcast because I think they'll help amplify
mhm,
my podcast to their audiences, and that's who I want to reach. You could do the same for commercial fishermen in Alaska. You could
mhm,
find what they watch. You could find what architects in Los Angeles watch. You could find what people who are interested in Nintendo Switch games uh,
mhm.
in the UK watch. So all of that type of intelligence is what we help people do.
That's great, actually. That definitely going to help people. It is a kind of a analytics, I feel, but it is
Yeah,
also,
sort of.
yeah. So it is
Yeah,
going to
we kind of
work
think of
as
it like a
a
research tool.
yeah, research to all. Yeah, that's great. And thank you for sharing. Moving towards you were founder of Moz as well. Am I taking the name right? Moz,
Yeah,
yeah.
Moz. Yeah.
So, which specifically help boost the rankings and again the search engine visibility. Would you like to share anything about? I know actually a couple of things about search engine. How does it work? But it would be great if you can share more insights about towards the.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, for folks who are listening or watching, probably familiar with search engine optimization, which is the practice of improving your website and producing content to rank highly in search engines, mostly Google these days because they have such a high market share,
Mm,
and earning traffic back from those, not from the paid ad side, but from the organic results that don't cost you anything per click, but you obviously have to make the investments in content and amplification, links back to your site, those kinds of things. And Moz, yeah, that's exactly what Moz did. It helped you, had a link graph of the web,
mm-hmm,
help you try and find link opportunities, help you try and determine where link value comes from, help you, it crawls your website every week and tells
mm-hmm,
you, oh, you have these problems or issues, much like Google Webmaster Tools does, Google Search Console now. And Moz, yeah, Moz was a very, very successful company, had a high growth rate for many years while I was there. I left a few years ago, and they're in a much more competitive market space than they were previously. So,
mm-hmm.
a lot of people use SEMrush and Ahrefs, which are competitors to Moz over the last 10 years. And but that company is still, yeah, still doing well, still based here in Seattle.
Does it help to get the domains like website domains more visibility, like when you search something in the search engine, it is like your website will pop up first in the recommendation kind of, or in the top 10 recommendations in the search engine? How does it work that way?
What do you mean? When you start
So
typing and you get
when you
those
search
suggested
keyword search,
searches?
right? So whenever we are doing the keyword search and suppose somebody wants their website domain or the something which is like they want it to be like get into like top 10 list in the search
Yep.
engine. So that is something that it helps to bring that.
Yeah, that's exactly what Moz helps
Okay.
with, precisely,
Okay.
right?
Okay. That's interesting actually. And that definitely helps. Like, you will get more clicks from like, you will get the more hits on your website content. So yeah.
Yeah.
Moving towards again the search engine part actually, how the question is like it's a lot more about search engines and improvising to grow from good to better. How does this keyword search help? I think you answered a couple things, but the question here moreover like how to grow from good to better. So if you are doing good, but how this keyword search engine can help them to do better perform.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that, let's see, the broad answer to how can search engines help your website do better is when people search for particular topics and you
Mhm,
are the answer to that question, you
mhm,
get not only a visit, but also an opportunity to brand
mhm, mhm.
your, to
Yep.
reach that person with your brand and to create an impression around what you can do for them. Hopefully, if you appear in many searches
Mhm,
much of the time, right, you can attract not only traffic, but eventually people who sign up for your email list or purchase your product or read something from you and decide, yeah, you know what, I think I want to use this company to solve my problem. I think I want to take
mhm,
advantage of their products or services,
mhm, mhm,
which is great. I would say that keyword research in particular
mhm,
uh, is the practice of essentially figuring out what are the words and phrases that people are using in search
mhm,
engines, and then in what volume, and are they valuable to me as potential visitors, and then I'm going to go create content and optimize that content or in links to that content, help
mhm,
people solve their problems with that
mhm.
content, and move up in the Google rankings so that I can attract more of that traffic.
Yeah, that's great actually. And then definitely it helps to create your own, like get the marketing for your own brand actually. So that's a pretty interesting area. Moving towards your, you are a writer as well. So you wrote a book, author of Lost and Founder, which talks about a painfully honest field guide to startup world. So how was the journey actually writing the book? Like it was like real experiences that you shared along the journey, or how was it?
Yeah, I found it very cathartic and very fulfilling. Um, it can be challenging to revisit pain that's happened to you in the past and decisions that you regret. But I think if you're a founder and an entrepreneur, you almost certainly have decisions that you regret, right? You've
Yeah.
made some good choices and probably some bad choices, and you know it is just reality that you're going to find
Mhm.
as you analyze that past journey and as you try to share it with others. I think, look, there's a lot of business books out there written by entrepreneurs who try and
Mhm.
paint a picture where they say, oh, here's what I did, and this is why my company was so successful, and you should do it too. And I kind of hate those books. I don't find them particularly valuable. I don't know. I think that's a lot of hot air and bloviating, and it's not compelling to me. So when I wrote this book, I wanted to write something that would share the dark underbelly, right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
hard parts, the nastiness,
Mhm.
the challenges, and emotionally difficult parts of a startup journey, and give folks some insight into hard decisions that I made, that we made, that were wrong,
Mhm.
not just the ones that were successful, right? I don't want to point to Boz and be like, oh, look at this, $55 million a year company that, raised all this money and grew super fast and blah, 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 employs all these people, has all these thousands of customers, whatever, right? I also want to point to it and say, this is where we messed up. This is how we missed this market timing. This is how we made foolish investments. This is why we had to do layoffs, a few
Mhm.
years ago. This is what those board meetings look like, the
Mhm.
complexities of that situation. This is how these relationships deteriorated between people.
Mhm.
And I think that's hard to share, but I also know that for a lot of the readers of the book, it's really resonated, and that gives me comfort, right? Maybe all that pain I went through wasn't for nothing because it can help somebody else.
Yeah. So some of the things I feel like, I also work for a couple of startups. I feel like they are always worried about the financial risks come along with the startup areas. So how did you deal with you? Definitely you would have gone through that. Now you are more financially stable, but always people when they start initially, they always go through that journey. And a lot of people are not good at handling the financial risk. So what would be the best way to handle that? How one can
I
handle
mean, Vaishali, I'm not sure what impression I gave you, but SparkToro is in the early stages of startup. It hasn't
that?
launched yet. we are very much in a financial risk situation,
Okay.
right?
So
Yeah.
you're good
So
at that. Yeah.
yeah, no, we're lucky, right? We raised a healthy amount of money about a year and a half ago. We have a good runway, so hopefully we can get through this, this crisis and the economic slump that's going to hit afterward. It's already starting right now. But I think that one of the best things that you can do, which I did not do at Moz, and I really should have done, is to structure your company in such a way that you maximize your potential survivability, long-term survivability. And to my mind, that means building a business model that initially requires very little cost and labor, and then proving that out over time and only deciding whether to scale up or raise money or sort of go big after you've done that. I think a lot of the later startups, a great example of this is the Atlassian, right? Atlassian basically didn't raise any money. They started very small and then they built up slowly over time. And then once they realized they were onto something extraordinary, then they raised some money, right? And some of the founders took some of that money off the table, and then they committed to sort of this big growth curve. I think that is a much, much smarter way to play it than, the counterpoints. The common counterpoints are people like WeWork and Uber, even Lyft, right, who essentially raised huge amounts of money to build this business that doesn't really work unless tons of capital is coming in. And many, many startups do this and think they're supposed to do this when they raise venture capital. And I don't think that is the way forward. I think we're going to move to a world, I think we're already moving to a world where profitability is the first thing you should aim for, long-term survivability, low cost, a good profit margin, hiring fewer people, keeping them remote, not investing in tons of office space, not having high startup costs. Those kinds of things can be remarkable because it can give you a lot of runway to make mistakes early on and learn what works for your business. I think that makes you much more financially secure.
Yeah, that's pretty wise actually, because a lot of times it happens. Like I worked for 2 startups, and then one was quite like doing well, but the other one was always they were worried about taking the financial risk, because unless until you take that risk, it's very hard to grow. It is always like a leap of faith, whether the things will work or not. It is always going to be like that. So yeah, that was very wise, and thank you for sharing. Moving towards, you already talked about a couple of challenges, actually, real challenges which startups face. Any other things that you would like to highlight when it comes to the startups?
Sure. I think one of the hardest things that many startups, probably almost everyone, face are hiring and team building, finding the right people and bringing them aboard, and letting the wrong people go. Those are hard challenges. They're people challenges. I think many, if not most, startup founders have a lot of empathy for other people, but at some point in their journey along, building their business, they feel like the right thing to do is to treat people like numbers, and that also gets really hard. I would urge folks to consider 2 things that I found to be true, which I didn't initially expect. One is that I thought that to build a successful company, I had to hire ahead of revenue. Meaning, basically I had to hire more people than I needed so that in the future, when revenue ramped up, we wouldn't slow our growth down artificially by not having enough talent and enough people to do the work. And I think that was wrong. I think, in fact, you can hire slow, you can hire behind growth and be very successful. I think that you don't need, most of the time, what investors tell you or what markets will tell you is sort of like, well, you have to grow faster than your competitors so you can win this market before anybody else. I don't think that's actually true. With a few exceptions, I think that's almost never true. In most markets, what you should do is profitably and sustainably find that growth ramp rather than try and beat the market by growing ahead of where you have revenue. So that's one thing that will obviously, that can be a huge lifesaver in terms of future decisions you make around employees and layoffs and firing people and all that kind of stuff. It also means you don't have to hire as fast. And hiring very fast is what I found really hurts culture at a startup. The second piece that surprised me was I found initially when I started hiring people, I thought the worst thing in the world I could do would be to have to fire them. I thought firing people is terrible. It's always wrong and bad. And what I found over my career was no, in fact, when we let people go, they often went on to be more productive, more successful, happier at their next companies. Almost always, actually. I can barely think of an example where that wasn't true. And so that made me realize, oh, we should be much more liberal with letting people go. It's okay to let someone go. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It just didn't work out. The story that we wanted to tell wasn't the one that you wanted to hear. So let's part ways. And as long as you're generous with your severance and you can help people find new gigs, I think letting people go early on when they're not showing that they're kind of the right fit for your company is a good thing. If you find that 2 or 3 people who you've hired don't fill a role well, you might not be doing the role correctly. That might be on you, not on them. So that would be the other lesson.
Yeah, these are like very insightful actually. I felt like the first one that you talked about, like always have the more resources. That definitely some of the backdrops I can see in the startups, that they always are with the lack of resources. If somebody leaves, then it's like you have a time to shut down the business. So yeah, this is really very good strategies that you shared. And moving towards your leadership style, how do you lead? Actually, definitely you are a leader. Actually, I can't doubt about that. So how is your leadership style?
Let's see. I am. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. I think that's a tough one to analyze from a distance. I would say that I like to build connections with the people I work with. I don't really believe in separating personal and work. I know that works for some people, right? They can sort of maintain professional distance and not build relationships with the people they work with. I don't do that. If we work together, we have a personal relationship. I'm the same person, whether we're having dinner together or if we're working on a project together. I don't really like to separate those sides of myself. I think I'm also someone who tries to lead a little more by example than by instruction. So rather than saying like, hey, go do this, I sort of say, hey, here's what I'm doing. What are you working on? right. And then it's
great, actually.
Okay.
It's very important. Yeah. Leadership by example is a great style to have, actually. So that, you don't have to say much. Once people see the leader doing right thing, automatically people follow that.
But potentially, it works well for some people. It doesn't work well for other people. I've worked with plenty of folks who love to be told exactly what to do and how to do it, right? Just give me the task, assign it to me, make it really clear. Don't make me have to define my own work and job. And I don't do particularly well with that style. Right? That's not how I lead. But I've hired people who have led that way, and they've been able to make that work for their teams. But it's not me. So yeah, I think that's a weakness that I have to recognize. I have a strength in one area, weakness in another.
Yeah, but definitely there were a couple of things that you mentioned. It's like a good leadership style to have. Moving towards establishing a brand in the crowded space, actually, how hard and difficult or challenging it is when it comes to creating your own brand? Because this space is very crowded, actually. Nowadays, like anybody can access the social media, anybody can go and have their content, but it is very hard to engage people.
Yeah.
and create your own space. So how did it go for you actually? So you already created your brand kind of.
I mean, I think that is one of the things that certainly was very helpful for me, is that I got into the spaces early, right? I was building up a content brand before content marketing became popular. I was building up a video brand before video content became popular,
Mm-hmm.
building up a social media presence before social media really took off.
Oh, nice.
And I think that those lessons are always true. If you get ahead of a curve on something, right? If you see, oh, podcasts are taking off, I should get a podcast. Oh, whatever. Episodic video feels like it's something that's probably taking off right now. That's early in the curve. You could probably jump on that. TikTok, potentially is relatively early in its curve.
Yeah.
I think that there are probably some forms of visual content that are still early enough in the curve where you can pick them up. And some of it might be industry specific. So it might be, oh, well, everyone's doing photos on Instagram. Yeah, but who's doing Instagram for B2B in the chemical processing industry? Nobody.
Yeah, no.
That's your chance, right? There you go. That's an opportunity. So I think that being early was absolutely one of the things that I did well. I also try to be, I'm not sure if this is tied to my success, but I think that being very authentic and not very corporate has helped me. I think that that's a brand thing that is useful in the current era. It's unusual still in a lot of business to business stuff, a lot of, I don't know, corporate marketing stuff. And so it feels good to people, and that resonates with the right, with my audience at least.
Yeah, that's pretty wise. And moving towards the last question of the podcast is that any kind of advice you would like to give to aspiring entrepreneurs or the students or the professionals who are looking to grow in their career?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the best things you can do that I wish I had done is join other startups. I wish I had joined a couple other startups, even if they had totally failed and done terrible and whatever, and I hadn't had a great time there. I wish I had joined a few other companies before starting my own, because I think that you can rapidly learn and observe kind of what you like and don't like, and what you want to replicate and don't. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I would certainly urge anyone coming out of school or considering a career as a founder to do that. I also find it really valuable to gain deep expertise in one area that you are passionate about or interested in, that you think will help your business. For me, that turned out to be marketing, but it could be anything. It could be HR or finance or statistics or content or whatever you might be passionate about, mathematics, and then help other people with that.
Yeah.
Show off your expertise. One of the best ways to be successful as an entrepreneur is to have a great network around you. One of the best ways to build a great network around you is to be truly helpful to other people. And you can't be helpful to other people unless you first have unique skills that those people need. So build your skills, then build your network, then build your company.
Yeah, that's like a best advice to have actually. So thank you so much, and it was so much fun talking to you. Definitely you are a leader, I can see that, and I hope that I would be like a public speaker like you one day.
Do it.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I want to see it.
Yes, so thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and hope audience will also enjoy this episode. So until we meet, happy leading. Let's live together. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for having me, Vaishali.
Thank you so much.